Welcome to Mexico City and the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. I won't be printing a little accent in the eye there, you just have to imagine it. Media day, it started off with a little bit of a drama in Autosport land as stupid old me managed to leave his laptop somewhere. We thought we knew what the story was going to be. We thought it was just going to be all about the driving standards in the Austin Grand Prix. Didn't quite turn out like that, did it, Alex? It all blew up with the McLaren right of review. So what is happening?
Indeed, so it did and it didn't cover the driving standards element of the day, as you say, COTA. So yeah, essentially, as everything was sort of winding down here at the track, around about, I think it was sort of 5:30ish local time, documents popping up on the FIA system, summons for the McLaren Formula One team and summons for the Red Bull Formula One team for a hearing at 2:30 local time here in Mexico tomorrow. So that's going to be very, very late if you're watching in the UK or in Europe. Obviously not so late if you're in Mexico City or indeed anywhere in the Americas. But essentially what that is all about is about a process called the right of review, which effectively, when it comes to stewarding decisions, these things can't be automatically appealed, but a process can be triggered, which is what this is. If any of the parties involved, Red Bull or McLaren or the FIA, decide that there might be something new and relevant that needs to be assessed by the stewards, that like new evidence essentially that they didn't have access to at the time. So,
and that is the test, isn't it? That it has to be new and relevant and not before seen.
Correct. So in this case, it's McLaren that has done that, just to make that absolutely clear. So it's not the FIA that's decided its stewards need to look at something that they found that's new. It's what McLaren thinks they found that is new. So what can happen, or what will happen, is that hearing at 2:30, and essentially that comes into two parts. There will be the initial hearing to determine whether what McLaren has submitted, first of all, is new. First of all, if it is relevant and significant, and if it is determined that that is the case, then a second part of the hearing will kick in, which effectively is the stewards will go, right, do we need to rescind this penalty, keep this penalty the same? It will be as heard and new, effectively. There's a rather famous example that's rather pertinent to this case. I think, again, we need to think back to the 2021 Brazilian Grand Prix. A lot of chat about that, mainly from Autosport land from this guy, when it came to looking at what Max Verstappen did in Austin and what he did to Lando Norris in that case, and to Lewis Hamilton at Brazil in 2021. But of course, lots of differences, lots of similarities in terms of how Max was doing his driving, and that's where all the chat came about with the drivers today. But with this case, back in Brazil in 2021, Mercedes instigated a right of review because it wanted effectively the FIA to assess whether it should have given a penalty, because in that case it did not. In this case, it is Norris's penalty that McLaren want to be assessed. Now,
and in that case, in the case of Brazil, it was because an onboard that hadn't previously been seen or released suddenly came into the public domain, and they were able to view that, and that's why it was heard.
Correct. In that case, they decided that that was, although it was new, past that test, it didn't pass the significant element of the right of review in the steward's decision. Now that is pertinent to this case because, as I did, and if anybody else did, go back to watch the onboard from Max Verstappen's car when he was racing against Lando Norris at turn 12 at Austin when they both went off the track. Again, it's a rear-facing camera. Personally, I think with a forward-facing camera, it should always be on. I know that F1's broadcasters want to show different views to make it more entertaining, whatever, when it comes to that. But with these contentious incidents, it cannot be right that evidence, and I don't know if this is necessarily the case, because of course the hearing hasn't been heard. McLaren, no one around, understandably. Why would they sort of give away their legal argument to anyone ahead of time? But what I'm getting at here is if this is what is going on, I still think, as I thought in Brazil in 2021, as I think now, those on board should always be pointing forwards, because when it comes to contentious issues like this, you just want all the available evidence there. I understand the FIA have updated their system since 2021 that involves the use of AI technology to simulate track limits and things like that maybe played a part in this case that we're not aware of, that they haven't explained yet. But the critical element, or the similarities with that onboard video not being available, certainly very notable. But yeah, we await to see the outcome of that for McLaren. The other sort of interesting element that I gleaned from the paddock today when it came to the FIA is that obviously McLaren and Lando Norris in particular complaining about the fact that this penalty was issued without him being taken to the stewards and even consulted. According to the FIA, the drivers and the teams push for this. They want these decisions to be taken quickly and for things like podiums not to change. So there's a little bit of an element of half six of one and half a dozen of the other, if I'm going to mix my metaphors, or I think that one's actually right. But anyway,
Mathematically, yeah.
There's various things at play. So yeah, suddenly from what was a sort of just general driver chats, driver thoughts on various incidents day, got very interesting with what McLaren has done. But on that driver chat, Codders, you spoke to both of those McLaren drivers. What were they saying before this right review came out, and what the sort of general chat in the paddock was from the drivers about those contentious incidents in Austin?
Everyone had an opinion. Liam Lawson didn't have an opinion, didn't want to express an opinion. Oscar Piastri was quite funny. He said, actually, my penalty was probably the fairest of the lot on the day. Lando started doing that thing where he started asking his own questions and then answering it, which is kind of a tip he must have learned from Christian Horner, who does that all the time. Lando said that he didn't think he did anything wrong. So there was the question of, should he have given the position back and then tried to overtake again? Actually, the tyre situation meant that wasn't really on. And also, he thought he'd done everything wrong. There's been talk about what should and shouldn't have been done. Lando said, well, people who haven't driven racing cars are going to have opinions that aren't necessarily correct. It's very easy to sit on your sofa or behind a keyboard and express an opinion, but actually, roll of the ice gives our opinion on that away. Unless you've driven a racing car, you can't really properly understand what it is to be at the limit and to be in this situation where the rule is the driver whose front axle line is nearest is ahead going into the apex. It's basically his corner whether he goes off or not. It's very easy to do the equivalent of a professional foul, not that he put it that way, and basically go spearing off and claim the corner even though you're not fully under control. So there are arguments that maybe the rules need more nuance. Max Verstappen says basically it's over-regulated anyway and there are too many rules and what are we going to do? And Yuki Tsunoda said something along similar lines of, if we all obeyed the rules, it'd be like having AI racing. There'd be no passion. We'd all be sort of saying, after you, Claude. Oh no, please, after you. No, I'll take that back. No, please don't. And it would all get a little bit boring. So everyone's had an opinion. I think George Russell said something about putting gravel in Austin, which might sort it out, and that's something the FIA's been doing since sort of basically last year, has been putting gravel traps in to sort of act as a dissuader from people sort of mocking the whole track limit issue.
Yeah, it was interesting that what George said about, because it came up, I think, in the Sky's coverage, sort of their analysis from Anthony Davidson, chats about putting gravel traps in at those contentious turns in Austin. I understand the FIA asked the Circuit of Americas about doing that ahead of the 2024 US Grand Prix and did so again critically after what happened last Sunday. So moves the story on a little bit there. But COTA's position, as far as I understand it, is that effectively the solution that, and it was installed at the Red Bull Ring, which is basically you narrow the curbs, you repaint the lines, but you put a tiny little gravel trap in behind the curbs that can be adjustable, therefore removable. COTA saying that's just not possible, or from their position not possible right now, because the clay underneath the track means that keeping the track surface watertight is very difficult. Now, obviously, there's things like costs to consider. There's the fact that it may just be too difficult. Who knows? But there's various elements of that going on. But that's what the drivers want, or that's what drivers would like to happen. But it might not be totally so seamless and simple at Austin, even though that might be a very elegant solution and seem to work very well in Austria. So we've got just a few minutes left before we have to wrap up here. You were in the press conference, Codders, with a home hero, Sergio Perez. I thought it was quite refreshingly actually, he was just brutally honest about his own season. He said, I've had a terrible season. So how was he today?
I was gobsmacked when I heard that, and I'd sat in quite a stupid place where I couldn't actually see him because there was basically the FOM cameraman and his cameras between me and Perez. I'd needed X-ray specs to see him. But when he said that, I actually kind of leaned over to look at the look on his face because I couldn't believe it. But up until now, everyone's been in denial in Red Bull. Even Christian Horner and Helmut Marko have gone, he does the odd good race. So for Checo now to say, actually, I've had a bit of a shocker, refreshingly honest. Perhaps, given that the music's finally died down, perhaps they're teeing up some karaoke and he might come on and do My Way. I don't know, but yeah, he's clearly safe in the knowledge that he's done quite a poor job this year. Maybe he's actually been told that, you might have done a crap job this year, but you're still in a job for next year. So why not go out and tell everyone you've had a shocker? It'll be all right. So other than that, I don't know, maybe you've taken an honesty pill. Who knows? Very, very odd day, and made even weird by someone carrying a large sign past us. I think it's viewers will be quite in agreement. I think the mise en scène has been particularly eccentric this weekend, and it's only Thursday. So I think as we prepare to go off and eat some more tacos in our world record breaking taco eating attempt, we'll see you this time tomorrow.